Welcome to the Barna Resilient Pastor podcast, where we help pastors lead with wisdom, hope, and courage in a changing world. I'm Sharon Miller, and this podcast is part of Barna's mission to encourage and equip pastors to be resilient spiritually, emotionally, and in their leadership. Together, we'll explore new research and real conversations to help you understand the times and know what to do. If you're not doing so already, go to barna.com and sign up for the free Barna email to access the latest Barna articles, resources, and special discount offers. And as always, I am joined by my buddies, Rich and Glenn. How are you guys doing?
Good. Doing well, Sharon. Doing well. I before we got on here, I've been pondering something. I went to the supermarket today, and I have a pet peeve about going to the supermarket. Not just going to the supermarket. I enjoy. Sometimes it's a contemplative exercise for me to go through everything. But when I get to the checkout, is it in every state where they have like 60 prompts before you can actually finish checking out? So you hit your card, you pay your payment, whatever it is.
You're talking about self-checkout? You're talking about self-checkout?
No. I'm talking about go to the cashier and they go, okay, your total is now $963 for like bananas and whatever it is now. And then I go, use this card. And then it says, are you okay with this amount? Yeah, I'm okay with this amount. So, I start looking around. Do you want cash back? No, I don't want cash back. Is there anything else you would like? There's like 5 or 6 different options.
Do you want to round up to tip?
Do you want to round up? Do you want to tip? Do you want to pray for anyone? It's just, at this point, it's getting crazy. I'm not sure if that's like my supermarket in New York experience. And then what happens is, I look around and then next thing, there's 3 more prompts. I'm sorry. It was just really bothering me today. Any similar experiences like that for you guys or no?
I don't know, Sharon. How about you?
I mean, I'm kind of the opposite, honestly. Target is like my safe place. It's my happy place. It's where I go.
One-stop shop?
Yeah, just, unplug. It's a little bit therapeutic for me. The trouble I do have with Target is we have self-checkouts that they have like 10 of them, but on any given day, it's like 3 of them are working. Like the rest of them are just disabled. And so that's my one frustration, but actually really, I'm like a very basic girl that way. I love going to Target.
Well, Sharon, it's funny that you say that because Holly, my wife, puts in a lot of Target orders. So that's typically, I'm usually coming into the parking slot and, receiving the orders because that's kind of, so.
Oh yeah, same.
Yeah. So,
but Glenn, you were going to say something like right before we got on. I'm really curious now because you said you knew exactly what I was going to say. I didn't say.
I was wrong.
What were you going to say? What were you going to say?
Well, I thought when you said supermarket, I thought you were going to say, what is the one impulse purchase you always make when you go to the supermarket? It's not on the list. You always pick it up. What is it?
It's cookie and cream Hershey's bars. That's always. I mean, marketers. They know where to put the candy, okay?
Right
and it's not just for the kids.
That checkout thing when you're answering 9 questions.
That's exact. I'll get so fatigued. I need a Hershey cookie and cream bar at that time. That's my, before we move on here, what's your impulse buy? I mean, come on. It's not grapes and strawberries for you guys.
It's fresh guacamole. I walk by the deli section and, I'm here in California and it's like, they've just got fresh guacamole. I'm like, I need to have chips and guac. I gotta have it.
You Californians are something else.
I know. I'm rolling my eyes
in the supermarket.
Oh yeah.
I've never heard of such a thing in New York.
What?
Sharon, what's your impulse buy?
So again, like this is Target related. I basically live
a bag. What are you talking about here?
No. So there's a Starbucks inside of my Target. And so I always I know the guy, Demetrius. He's the barista at the Starbucks.
You've been there a bunch.
Because he sees me coming. He knows we know each other. I ask him how his day is going. We're like friends now. So it's Starbucks and then Target. It's
that's comfort food right there. Yeah.
All right, I respect.
But not guacamole. Just get out of here. Get out of here with that.
California.
Before we get into today's conversation, we want to thank one of our partners, World Vision. Together, in partnership with Danielle Strickland, 10 by 10, and the Barna team, they've created a free resource to equip parents, pastors, and leaders as you guide the spiritual lives of the kids and teens in your care. Download Parenting the Open Generation at worldvision.org/resilient26. We want to invite you all into something that's been really meaningful for so many leaders in our community. We're excited to let you know that registration is open for the Resilient Pastor Collab, a 5-week interactive learning experience designed to help pastors and ministry leaders grow both personally and practically. And we were actually just talking about the topics for this before we started recording. Guys, what are you most excited about for this collab?
Well, first of all, I'm excited because
I'm excited to hear Rich.
Spaces like this provide very practical training insights. There's a conversational component to it where you're connecting with other pastors around the country. The topics that we have lined up, we've been discussing them, are topics that are near and dear to our hearts, whether it be preaching or leading with staff and things along those lines. But I think anytime pastors can get some very practical equipping around areas of leadership, is always a big win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, all kinds of practical topics. I think we're going to do one on preaching. I think we're going to do one on navigating kind of cultural moments stuff, and all of the things we talk about on the show. But we're going to go in a little bit more in depth, and each one of us are going to take a couple of these and go deeper. So I'm just looking forward to getting to know some pastors and talking. The podcast is a one-way street. These cohorts are a great way for us to hear from you and to have real dialogue around it.
Yeah, exactly. And so if that sounds interesting to you, over 5 weeks beginning February 24th, 2026, you will join live virtual sessions where Glenn, Rich, and myself will be digging into things like caring for your soul, preaching with relevance, navigating tricky cultural conversations, leading resilient teams, and more. What's really special about this edition is that it's happening in partnership with World Vision, helping broaden the impact and deepen our focus on pastors' resilience in today's complex world. Now, spaces are limited to keep the conversation real and interactive. So head to barna.com/collabs/resilient pastor collab to save your seat. Again, that's barna.com/collabs/resilient pastor collab. We'd love to see you there. Well, Rich, you recently got to sit down with Tyler and Kirsten Staton to talk about what it actually looks like to navigate marriage as pastors. Tyler Staton is the lead pastor of Bridgetown Church in Portland, Oregon, where he lives with his wife, Kirsten, and their sons, Hank, Simon, and Amos. He is passionate about living prayerfully and relationally. Tyler is the author of 3 books, The Familiar Stranger, Praying Like Monks, Living Like Fools, and Searching for Enough. And we actually touched on the relational lives of today's pastors back in episode 66 with David Kinnaman. So if you missed that, definitely go check it out. But today we want to double click specifically on the experience of being married in pastoral ministry. About 90% of Protestant pastors are married, and we wanted to devote an entire episode to exploring that reality. So, Rich, before we hear the conversation, can you share a little bit about what stood out to you as you talked with Tyler and Kirsten?
It was a delight to spend some time with the both of them, because they have New York City connections, and Tyler was a pastor in Brooklyn for a number of years. So we got to connect while he was here. But a few things. Number one, Tyler talking about remaining connected in marriage and ministry in your marriage, Tyler, as many people know, had a serious battle with cancer. And so we talked about suffering and what it means to stay connected there. But what was fascinating, and this is a nice little tease for the conversation, they talked a little bit about why they don't pray with one another as a married couple. And so it was a very, actually very great insight that you'll hear about in a minute. But that's a few things that stood out. But one of the things that they mentioned, as it relates to connection, and what Barna has done is done some research around this, stating that 53% of pastors say that it's very true that their spouse understands the struggles they experience in ministry. Showing that, listen, half of pastors feel some level of disconnection between their work and their marriage, which is quite a staggering figure if you really sit down and think about that for a moment. Half of the people think, I cannot find the level of connection that I want with my spouse around the work that I do. And so in my conversation with them, they shared a lot of practical ways that they remain connected as a couple in ministry. But I want to just throw it out to us here in terms of just to get a conversation going before we head over to that conversation with Tyler and Kirsten. What have you learned in terms of remaining connected in terms of your work life and your home life, your ministry life and your married life? What have you learned that has maybe helped you, or maybe what some of the struggles have been around maintaining that sense of connection? Glenn, let's start with you. What have you learned around some of that?
I have learned that self-pity is a sign that I'm not doing very well. And, I think
say more.
I think it's very easy, especially in my 30s. I found myself keeping score a little bit, like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm dealing with this and I'm dealing with this. And these people are expecting this, and naming all of the pressures. And there can be something therapeutic and maybe even necessary about naming the pressures that you feel, except that I wasn't naming it in a, hey, honey, I just want you to see me kind of moment. I was naming it in a, I need you to know what I'm going through so that you can step up and carry the load, and that's never a fruitful conversation. And it's interesting because I've been reading this book by, he's an atheist NYU professor, Scott Galloway. It's called Notes on Being a Man. There's some rough language in the book. I'm not necessarily recommending it, but what I found interesting is, even from a secular perspective, one of the things he tells young men, who he says in the book, is never keep score in your relationships. It doesn't end well. And then he says, he's kind of a finance guy, a business finance guy. And he said, think of it this way: you want to leave people with surplus value. In other words, give more than you take. I was thinking, that's called love. Give more than you. That's called love. And then recently, I've been meditating on the story of Elijah in 1 Kings 19. And one of the great signs that Elijah is not doing well is he has self-importance. God, this is what I did. I confronted the prophets. I did. He has self-importance, and then he has self-pity. I just want to die, And so I think there's a way of taking this stat and weaponizing it to kind of go, you see, honey, you don't understand what I'm going through. And I think that's the beginning of the end. Like, don't do that. That really what we want to try to do is to help our spouse see us without falling into the trap of self-importance or self-pity.
How about you, Sharon? It's great, Glenn.
So, mine and Ike's situation is a little bit different because we do actually understand what it's like to be in ministry. And so that isn't necessarily a struggle. I think one of the ways this shakes out that is probably pretty common for marriage is even though we do understand one another, there are still plenty of situations where Ike is coming to me and he's upset about something, but he is not looking for me to help him figure it out. He's not looking for me to give him an answer or a solution. He just wants me to listen, to say, I'm so sorry. That's really hard. And I think that's a skill that we all need in marriage. But I am really curious to know that roughly half of pastors don't feel fully understood by their spouses. That makes a lot of sense in the sense that I think anyone who is not in ministry, they think they know what it's like to be in ministry. And so it almost creates this isolation for pastors where it's like you don't actually know. And then to experience that isolation when it comes to your spouse as well, who doesn't fully understand what it is like. And so I am actually curious because I cannot speak to that. How have you, Glenn, you've already named self-pity, but that isolation that is somewhat self-imposed where it's like, I'm special, this is a really special calling that nobody understands. How have you avoided boxing your wife out of that space so that you're not feeling isolated? How about you, Rich?
Where my mind goes initially in that question, Sharon, and even backing up just a little bit, it's interesting to see the quality of marriage and how, from a communication perspective, if you're not doing the interior work, how much disconnection can emerge. And so it's amazing how I have gone from preaching on a Sunday and using all the words and all the nuance and all the articulation. And then for whatever reason, I cannot find the words in the kitchen to offer the kind of thorough communication that there's a block here.
Yeah.
And that 50%, you raise that 50% of folks who don't do that. I wonder if there's a correlation between that statistic and the kind of work that really needs to be done to connect vulnerably, to speak about the weariness and the pain, the preferences and the desires, the needs and the expectations. It's just a whole nother category of communication that I think a lot of pastors are not equipped for. And so that's been an area. Rosie and I are celebrating 20 years of marriage this year. It's beautiful. And at the same time, I realize we both have done a lot of work personally and together, and yet we still find ourselves grasping for connection and to do it well. And I think to myself, imagine folks who have never done any work. The level of connection, it becomes very challenging. And so I just wonder if there's a significant correlation between that statistic and the inability of people to get the help that they need.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the thing that is there's an ordinary practice and an extraordinary practice. I think for me, the ordinary practice is just going on a walk together, even if it's a couple of times in the week, simple, go out the neighborhood. And having a dog is a big part of this because it's like, well, we got to take the dog for a walk, And I think for me, when I'm on a walk, I'm not on my phone. There is something, physiological about how a walk untangles your brain, helps you to kind of unearth some of your emotions. And this is stereotypically male, but I think for a lot of people who are just wired this way, where there's something about pace or a purposeful thing that kind of helps your focus. And I think there's something there that gets you out of the mode of sulking or hiding, quote unquote. We can hide with our devices even in the same home. And so getting out together, I think, is a big part of that. That's even a little bit different actually than a face-to-face date. And again, there's some people who talk about the male brain where you're talking face to face and the words come up slower, but you go side by side and all of a sudden, and I find this even with my son as a developing teenage boy, so you go side by side and all of a sudden you're able to say words a little bit better. The unusual one is more building in times in the year to be able to really slow down, extended time to retreat and talk. One small thing, we talked about the working genius. Have you guys talked about that? We talked about this with Patrick Lencioni's stuff. I think, Rich, you've been doing this for a longer time than me, but, he classifies your genius by altitude levels, like wonder and invention, you're way up high, then discernment, and I'm a discernment galvanizer. So I'm kind of in that middle altitude space.
Oh, I didn't know that, Glenn.
Yeah. And Holly.
That's what I'm as well.
There you go. And
I
Holly,
am too.
Hey, come on. No, come on.
We're changing the name of this podcast. Okay. The galvanizer pastor.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
But Holly is a wonder and invention. And I used to, for so many years in our marriage, I used to hear her input as, I need to galvanize somebody to fix this, And she's just wondering. She's just, I wonder if we do, don't you think our youth ministry, and I would hear is like, babe, I don't need another thing on my to-do list. Like I can't galvanize. I can't recruit the volunteer. And she's like, I'm not asking you to do anything. I'm just talking ideas with you, So sometimes it's as simple as knowing what altitude level is this conversation occurring at.
I will say I know we need to wrap this up, but I do wonder too, how much of that is like a male female difference, or like if your wife is a verbal processor, because I am a verbal processor. And so just because I speak it into, the air does not mean I'm asking my husband to now, like, you have been tasked with this thing, or you have to fix this for me. Cause he's very much like, oh, you have said it. And now I have to be, like the Princess Bride, like as you wish, like I have to accomplish this now. And I've like saddled him with this weight. So I wonder too, how much of that is just like men and women.
Well, Rosie could attest, whenever Rosie starts mentioning stuff, I start getting up and putting things into action. And she's the one saying, I didn't ask you to do anything, man. So I'm just like, oh, sorry. Well, we can go a whole lot of different directions with that there. But my conversation with Tyler and Kirsten was just so wonderful. And I'm grateful for the great work that they're doing out in Portland. And you're going to love this conversation. Check it out. Thanks to two of you for being on the podcast. Great to have you.
Yeah, we're delighted to be with you, brother.
Well, first and foremost, we're going to be talking about pastoring and marriage and parenting, all the good stuff. But before we get into that, I want to just hear a little bit about how the two of you met. And I'm not sure who has the more accurate story in terms of how the two of you met. There's always some embellishment. There's always so-and-so has a particular perspective that the other doesn't carry. Would you say you both have a pretty aligned perspective on how you guys met and who made the first move and all the rest?
Yeah, I was at the gym bench pressing.
Yeah.
And she noticed me from a distance.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Obviously.
How did it happen, Kirsten?
Well, we grew up together. Our families were good friends in Nashville, Tennessee. And so we did lots of holidays together. We did Christmas Eve together. We did Thanksgiving sometimes together.
We were 7. I was 7 and she was 6 when we met.
Is that right?
This is like the American version of arranged marriage.
Okay.
Definitely just family friends for a really, really long time. And I mean, this could take 2 hours.
I'm sure.
So to really speed it up.
Yes.
Oh, that was a cue to me. to really speed it up, we went, my family moved when I was in high school. We went our separate ways. Both went different places out of high school. Kirsten was actually living internationally in Athens, Greece. And we reconnected in Chicago. We both ended up at different schools in Chicago, reconnected, dated, got married. And we actually got married about, I think it was less than a year into both of our lives in New York. And so we did our first 11 years of marriage in New York City and then moved to Portland 4.5 years ago now.
Amazing.
But to answer your question, he immediately never noticed me our entire childhood.
Well, we're talking 6 and 7 years. Kirsten's what we're talking about. Okay.
Yes. But even, as we got older, and then it just so happened the day after I got my braces off, something changed. So
is that accurate, Tyler? Just want to verify here. Is that accurate?
That detail has been noted every single time this story has ever been told. I don't have a particular recollection of this, though I wouldn't put it past me. So I would say chances of its accuracy are high.
Okay. We're going to go with that.
Yeah.
Kirsten, thanks for naming that particular detail. I think it's really important here.
It is important.
It is very important. And I do have a picture of Tyler bench pressing. That feels like it was true as well. But that's at least in my own mind here. Well, we're talking about marriage, parenting. Barna has done a lot of research on this here, and I want to just jump right into one of the stats and want to hear from your perspective, maybe personally, as well as just what you're seeing as leaders. The stat says that only 53% of pastors say that it's very true that their spouse understands the struggles they experience in ministry. So 53% say it's very true. That means 47% of pastors say my spouse really does not understand the unique pressures and struggles of what it means to be in pastoral ministry and leadership. First of all, when you hear that statistic, any just general reflections around that? Does that surprise you? Or does that feel like consistent with your own experience or other pastors that you're aware of? What do you do with that stat?
That does surprise me, but also I'm on the end of the pastor's wife. So that does surprise me.
I think it doesn't surprise me. I do wonder if I think what it would feel like to be understood would be different, very subjective for each pastor in that stat. And what I would say is I feel really, really listened to and empathized with by Kirsten, increasingly so as we get better at loving each other, honestly. But I think it doesn't shock me just because marriage is hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard to love someone well. To live the vows you intend is a lot harder than intending them.
Now, you two in particular, when I think about the years you've been married and the numbers of transitions that you've had, so you went from planning a church in Brooklyn, to going to the Pacific Northwest to take over a very established church. You've had children along the way. You've had, Tyler, you in particular, which we'll get to in a minute, significant health challenges. There's been a lot of transition around just your own marriage and leadership. What have you learned around transitions, pressures? What has helped to keep the two of you connected? Here's why I just say that to frame it. There are a lot of pastors listening right now, experiencing all kinds of distress, transitions, trying to remain connected. And remaining connected is not a thing we do perfectly, but there are stages of connection that can actually lead us to a deeper love and stability and connection. What have you learned over the years amidst the transitions about remaining connected in your own marriage?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is, two things about Tyler and I that are one thing that's very similar with both of us is we don't think through risk and reward and all of that very intensely. And we tend to not be very anxious people. So that does help us as far as transitions and change and all of that. One thing that has been really helpful to me is Tyler has always obviously loved being a pastor, loves working with the church, but has just had a very, very solid, direct communication with Jesus that has very much overshadows everything else in his life. And so I've felt just kind of like he's had a posture or an attitude of like, well, if all of this fails, it's okay. So I don't know if that's a horrible thing, but it's been very helpful for us. And I have really, really appreciated just this. The church just comes second. And that's been very helpful for us.
I think I would say, Rich, really practically, we both have, I think, done a good job of listening to each other's fears without trying to fix or absolve them. I feel like as we've approached and entered into each transition, we've been able to say, this is what I'm afraid will happen to one of our children, to me, to you, to us, without the other person saying, you shouldn't worry about that, or, or even just trying to create the conditions where that fear goes away. I think we've been aware, I can't really remove your fears, but I can be safe for you to process those things with.
Now, let's just park on that for a second, because I imagine there are a number of marriages, pastoral or otherwise, in which that is not the conversation that's happening in the kitchen or in the bedroom, a conversation where someone feels really safe to articulate, these are my fears, these are my anxieties, and have that held, have that not trying to be fixed. I don't want to get too prescriptive here. At the same time, we want to help pastors and leaders to move in a direction like this. How did you arrive at that? What was somewhat temperament and personality? What was formation? How have you learned to actually live in that space together where you can have that level of honesty and vulnerability as you seek to remain connected? Because we're talking about remaining connected is not simply going over your weekly schedule and making sure that you're going to be here for dinner on this night and who's cooking that night. We're talking about remaining connected in some very significant, vulnerable moments. How did that come about, and what encouragement would you offer to pastors in their marriages along those lines?
I would say the unique dynamic that Kirsten and I possess is I'm very much a verbal processor. And so there has never been an issue with me saying how I'm feeling and what I'm thinking about what's going on. Kirsten is the opposite of that. She's very internal. So we're kind of the opposite classic gender roles, emotionally speaking.
Yeah.
Like I would be the more emotional one between the two of us. So it has come primarily by formation, I would say. I don't think, so, and our formation has been different. I think I've had to learn how to listen and what to share. And I think Kirsten has had to learn how to share and how to make someone feel heard, and so I would say for me, that's involved very practically just learning my wife's personality and trying to meet her where she is, not ask her to meet me or bring her where I am. So I'm totally a morning person, like wake up in the morning with all the thoughts that I need to share that day readily in my mind, everything. And at night, like after dinner, I'm like, I honestly don't even know what I care about or want in life anymore. I'm slowly like shutting down. And Kirsten's the opposite of that. Like she's ready to talk the later the night gets. And so I think I've had to learn to attune to like, oh, Kirsten said something that's kind of an invitation in.
Mm-hmm.
I need to set my routine aside and be present to her right now. I've also learned that when Kirsten begins to share, I have a terrible habit. This is really specific, but I'm just trying to be helpful and name the formation I've had to
Please do.
I've had a terrible habit I've noticed. We've never talked about this, of jumping in and finishing her sentences, like trying to get the story to proceed. And I've just noticed that whenever I do that, she typically like kind of closes back off. And so I think I've just observed over time, like, oh, when Kirsten begins to share, I really have to learn to just keep my mouth shut. And essentially, the spiritual direction has been a helpful tool because I know how to do group spiritual direction. And so I'll say, like, is there anything more?
Mm-hmm.
And that has drawn her out a lot more. And I think I've learned to see, because I have a radar for seeing what the Father is doing and trying to join in the language of Jesus. Like pastorally, we learn that first in mission, right? You know, I'm seeing what God's doing in the midst of a worship gathering or a mission project in my city or whatever it may be. But I think I've learned to begin to stretch that muscle and like, oh, I'm seeing what the Father's doing in my home at 10:30 when Kirsten shares something that feels like, oh, that might be an invitation in. So become attuned right now and just create space, be present right here. And so that's what formation has looked like for me. And I feel like in the last year or two in our marriage in particular, I have gotten to be on the receiving end of a lot more of Kirsten's true thoughts and feelings, whether they're things that she's angry about. And I don't mean like toward me about our marriage, but just anger she's carrying on behalf of one of our children or something one of them's going through, or a friendship situation, or fear that she's carrying, or desires. You know, those sorts of things have just tumbled out of her more, I think, as I've learned to be a little bit less fleshy in our marriage.
Kirsten, would you add anything to that? And before I want to talk about the work that you do as a doula, but would you add anything to that?
Yeah, well, first of all, even before I wake up, I typically will have like 30 text messages from Tyler.
It's not as true. This feels like the braces thing.
5 text messages.
5. But by the way, 5 in the morning is pretty intense anyway. Kirsten, I'm with you. Yeah. Go ahead.
He's ready to like seize the day and just go. And I am like, like, don't talk to me. I don't want to interact with anyone. So there is a strong difference there. But I would say, yes, I absolutely believe that even in the past year, there has been a massive shift of feeling safe. I have had a really hard time, whether it's my personality or I don't know exactly what all has made me the way that I am, but it's very hard for me to be vulnerable with the people that I love and I'm closest to, you know? So I think there has been such a safety in somebody listening, and pausing and, you know, when you're talking to somebody and you can see that they like, just even in their head, you're like, ooh, I can tell that they're literally thinking about something else while they're talking to me. I feel like that has happened less and less and less. And just there has been a presence that has really shifted things. And yeah, I think I've also just been like, I don't want to share this, but I'm just going to do it. And then it does feel like it does create a closeness between us that we haven't had in the past.
And what you're naming is, I think, what is a universal experience for every married couple, especially or including pastors, or maybe sometimes especially pastors, where the idea of vulnerability and connection often goes missing. We're so accustomed to leading in one area, but not in others, casting vision and having language for vision in the church office, but not able to cast vision in the kitchen as it relates to our own home. And so you're naming some important things here around connection. Along those lines, connection amidst suffering. Tyler, obviously, or many of our listeners know that you had a significant health challenge in terms of battling cancer, and you're doing great right now. But Kirsten, I want to bring it over to you for a second, because there's going to be moments in marriage, pastorally or otherwise, where suffering's going to hit, pain's going to hit, and remaining connected, supportive, whether it's happening to the pastor or the pastor's spouse, however, whether it happens to a child or to a family member, the ability to remain connected and supportive in that is paramount. You are a certified birth doula, and we were talking before we started recording this. I mentioned that we hired a doula for a second child, and it was a wonderful experience, so helpful. But in your work, you have been able to journey with others in ways that lead to beautiful new seasons that are often preceded by pain and discomfort, uncertainty. What are the lessons you've learned as a certified doula around the context of marriage and suffering and pain? What in your experience could be helpful for our listeners who are pastors, who are listening in your own line of work? As a pastor, as a preacher, I'm always looking for what are the other areas of the other disciplines that can help me better understand what it means to be human, what it means to pastor, what it means to remain connected. What are some of the things you've learned in your line of work that can help maintain connection between pastors and their spouses?
That's a good question. And I would say the first thing that comes to mind is in birth, in labor, or in a situation where there's a diagnosis or suffering of any kind, like we've all experienced. There's so many voices, there are your friends, and then their family, and then your children. And I think, and again, amidst a birth, there's a lot of people coming in the room. And I think there is a strong importance of really, really slowing down and trying not to get caught up in all of the cooks in the kitchen. And I think it's hard to do that. But even to get very practical, just like with your body, trying to slow down and trying to just mimic somebody that is posturing themselves in a calm way. I think as far as when we received our son's diagnosis a few years ago, he had a heart issue. There were many times where I would kind of like spin out of control, and I would start Googling things of, okay, well, what does this mean in 5 years? And I always was called back to sit into his room, and in the chair that he was, going to be playing in at some point. And I would look at the picture of his sonogram, and I wasn't uttering these long, beautiful prayers. I just was recentering myself, saying, okay, I know God is in control of all of this. And I can Google, I can text this friend, I can pray, I can do all of these things that are good, but just reminding myself over and over and over, like, I actually have no control. And very much like birth, we have so little control, but trying so hard to posture ourselves in not to be cheesy, but a receiving posture. Like a baby is not going to be delivered if a mom is anxious, if she's tight, if she's afraid. And so you have to completely relax your body in order for a baby to be born. And so I think just this posture of, I am here and I'm going to receive this news, and I'm not going to be, swayed all over the place. I'm going to keep my eyes fixed on Jesus, and that's it.
I want to pause our conversation for a moment and say a special thank you to our partners at World Vision. World Vision has spent decades empowering the most vulnerable children around the world. Now, in partnership with Danielle Strickland, 10 by 10, and our friends here at Barna, they've created a free resource to equip parents, pastors, and leaders as you guide the spiritual lives of the kids and teens in your care. Parenting the Open Generation offers 9 practical principles to help you navigate the real challenges today's teens are facing and to support their faith formation in meaningful, grounded ways. Download Parenting the Open Generation at worldvision.org/resilient26. Again, that's worldvision.org/resilient26. We've also linked to it in today's show notes. Okay, back to our conversation.
We have pastors that are listening right now who there's some unpredictability they're experiencing, and their spouse is having a hard time just navigating this season. You just painted a wonderful, powerful picture about you with your son in the bedroom there. What are some words of encouragement? And Tyler, feel free to chime in as well. What are some words of encouragement that you have for those that are in the middle of unpredictability, uncertainty? You guys experienced that just a year and a half ago or so in terms of Tyler's battle with cancer. What's your words of encouragement? What might the Lord want to speak into this moment for those that are carrying some significant weight in this season?
I think that the powerful thing that a midwife or a doula provides to a woman in the suffering of labor is stability, consistency, and familiarity. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just like there's this person who I've gotten to know, and they're beside me, and they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And neither of us know how long this will last or what twists and turns may or may not still lie ahead for me. But they will be next to me when it's over. Mm. And I think that that's probably the best gift that we can give to one another amid difficult seasons. Some will be tempted to fix. Some will be tempted to try to be the healer. Some will be tempted to withdraw. Mm. Some will be tempted to blame. But ultimately, I think the invitation to all of us is to faithfulness. Mm-hmm. Can I just be faithful alongside companioning the person that God has called me to image his love to most profoundly.
Mm. Mm. Beautifully said.
I was actually, when he said that, I was imagining or going back to the moment when our first son was born, and I wanted Tyler there so bad. Like I wanted to see him, and I wanted to like make sure I knew that he was there.
You can feel the butt coming.
But there was something also just about my doula. Like as long as her hand, she was not, twisting me in circles and moving me from one place to the other. She literally had her hand here and just was offering very simple encouragement to me. And I have, just in that picture have been reminded of how much we have leaned on other people in our community too, as in the midst of the suffering, and just, again, that vulnerability piece. Until I moved to Portland, never cried in front of a friend. Mm. And I have cried in front of a lot of people. Wow. And that just the safety, again, coming back to that of being able to be like, ooh, this is actually too much for me. Mm-hmm. It's spilling out and I can't even pray about it. And so as far as encouragement to others, like, you can't be like, well, go get good friends. Mm. Like it's a promise. Everyone's promised great friends. I know that's not reality for everybody, but those 1 or 2 or 3 people that you can truly be yourself with and like, I can't pray about this because I have too much skin in the game, but I know this person can.
Yeah.
And so, of course, through leaning on those other people has helped us stay connected because that helps us from breaking.
Yeah. Yeah. So well said. So well said. I want to bring this conversation to a close with one last question. And again, this is connected to connection. What have you learned over the years around praying with one another? When I meet with pastors from time to time, I get the spectrum of experience around some pastors and their spouses pray often. Some pray in moments of crisis or challenge, and they just feel compelled to join with one another. Others very rarely. What have you learned over the years around praying as a ministry couple together? Any words of just personal experience or perspective that might be helpful for pastors and their spouses in their own journeys?
I have some thoughts on that. I think in our personal lives, we've never been the couple that has spent much time praying together. I think most of the praying together, I would say Kirsten's name is on my lips in prayer every day, but it's mostly in private. And everyone's going to have different spiritual pathways with God, like different kind of first loves, most natural connections, like downstream ways of living prayer. And that's not a negative thing. I would say it's a good thing that you don't need to curb. You can't only pray one way, but it's good to know, like, hey, this is kind of home base for me. And I probably am never going to have a life that doesn't include this practice. And so for me, that's walking or journaling early in the morning and praying. And that's, and Kirsten is someone that I'm always praying for and holding before the Lord. But most of the praying that we've done aloud in a classical sense together has been for other people. And I would say what I've learned over the years and what I think is really crucial for pastoral couples is I have learned to see and value Kirsten's spiritual gifts. And I think that's really important because it can be easy for us to have a life that more or less props up and celebrates my spiritual gifts. And I think that means that for me to be formed in the image of Jesus is when I'm not preaching in public or those sorts of things to primarily take the role of seeing and celebrating the ways that others image Jesus. And Kirsten is so profoundly gifted in hospitality. And so while I might have words worth sharing from a distance in front of a mass of people, her words across the dinner table or in prayer for someone in need in our home almost always carry exponential spiritual currency. And so one thing I've learned is to defer when we're praying together for someone else. And then the other thing I've learned is this, that I think there are critical seasons when prayer together as a couple becomes paramount. So we've talked a lot about the strengths in our relationship. A couple years ago now, we hit probably the most crisis point that we've had relationally. And it wasn't one profound event. It was more like a quiet crisis where like resentment had built and built and built. And then it was one day, oh no, we don't see each other through eyes of grace anymore. And I think in our era, there's been such a pendulum shift from like, you don't need to seek counseling, just pray, and now I feel like the answer is almost always the opposite. Like, oh, you're struggling in your marriage? You need to find a great counselor. You need to read this book. You need to do this intensive I did. You need to, and I would say it's always yes to all of it. But I remember Kirsten saying to me in the early going, as we realized, oh, we've got some stuff to work through together. She said, we have to get on our knees at the foot of our bed every day and ask Jesus for help. We need to ask him to change, to wash our eyes so we see each other through grace again.
Wow.
Because we can have all the conversations, self-understanding, seeing the other. We can do all that work. But if God doesn't reform each of us and the space between us, it's all just going to be, Band-Aids. And so there was a months where just we would pray simple prayers on our knees together at the foot of our bed every morning. And I think that's
very simple.
Yeah. I mean, this was like a 15-second practice often, before we ran out the door, but it was a joint intention and humility before the Lord that I think is an important part of our journey for us to share with whoever may listen.
Well, the image that you just painted is a really powerful one. And I imagine that there are a lot of pastors and pastoral couples that are going to be listening to this, and that is their next step. And I'm so glad you said 15 seconds, because some folks are about to pray for 15 hours and then be in a worse position after praying than before praying. But those bite size, a little bit in Jesus' hands goes a long way. And that's a beautiful image that you've given us. As we're ending on prayer, would you mind, whether you both or whether just one of you would just offer a prayer of blessing? Again, the church desperately needs, especially for married couples. We have plenty of single pastors and such, but we need pictures of couples and families that are growing in grace towards one another, that their marriages are an icon of God's love and God's grace. And we want to pray that happens. Would you mind just closing our time with a prayer of blessing over those who are listening right now, and then we'll be on our way.
Yeah. Well, Rich, I was just going to add one quick thing about the last thing that Tyler said. And that was just, again, I do feel like every marriage is different. Every individual is so different. But if you feel freedom to be, this doesn't sound what I'm trying to say, but to be who you are. And again, I think for so long I felt like, oh my gosh, Tyler is like, he does all these things and he knows the Bible better and he can quote this. And, I just felt insecure of where I was. And I felt like as time went on, again, like what he said, like, whoa, we have different gifts. We bring completely different things to the table. Yeah. I don't judge your relationship with God. You don't judge my relationship with God. I felt, again, this freedom and safety. And I think praying together could always be a great thing. And I think it has to be a mutual desire, because if one is pushing the other, maybe you're not ready. And I just feel like that could be dangerous. That sounds intense, but I would imagine that there's a lot of women, maybe men too, out there that feel like, my gifts are less than, or, whatever, especially in the church. And I feel like Tyler has just been like, this, like, you do you're great at this. I'm not giving you any pressure to be a certain person or interact in a certain way at the church and all of these things. And that freedom has actually really, really been a benefit to my relationship with Jesus. So praying together when it is a mutual desire, I think is very important.
That's a great word of wisdom.
Okay.
A great word of wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay. Lord Jesus, I pray that you would recover a better picture of love between man and woman in your church that would give hope to the world and would ultimately be a picture that reminds us of your return, Jesus, and evokes greater longing to point all of our desire and hope in your return. And I pray, I want to ask for patience and endurance in couples that are struggling. Just as Kirsten said, I know that there are certain personalities that would want to give up and be paralyzed. There are others that would want to activate. And I pray for hopeful waiting, even as we're actually recording this in the midst of the season of Advent. I pray for hopeful waiting in marriages, that couples would be able to trust that they made commitments to one another that are worked out over a long period of time. And the deepest formation is almost always the slowest variety. And so I pray that there would be a gracious pace at which husbands and wives are able to operate with one another for the renewal of their union. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thanks, you two, for being with us today. It was a gift to be with you.
Yeah, peace to you, brother.
Yeah.
Thank you. See ya.
Well, thanks for joining us for the Resilient Pastor podcast. If this conversation encouraged you, share it with a fellow pastor or leader. You can find more Barna research and resources at barna.com. And again, thank you to one of our partners, World Vision. Together, in partnership with Danielle Strickland, 10 by 10, and the Barna team, they've created a free resource to equip parents, pastors, and leaders as you guide the spiritual lives of the kids and teens in your care. Download Parenting the Open Generation at worldvision.org/resilient26. Thanks for watching and listening to the Resilient Pastor podcast. See you next time.